You know you're doing something right when you get a review like this. Jacinia wrote to let us know we were a huge help as she passed the NES on her way into the classroom. My name is Terry and I help teachers pass their certification exams at 240. Now today, I'm going to help you. This video is going to prepare you for Subtest 2 of the NES Elementary Education exam, which is test code 103. In this video, we're going to cover three things: what's on the test and how to study it, the most likely concepts that you're going to see, and we're going to look at a few practice questions. The NES Elementary Education Multiple Subjects exam is split into two subtests. Subtest 1 covers reading and language arts and social studies. Now, Subtest 2 includes mathematics, science, and the arts, health, and fitness. Each contains approximately 75 multiple choice questions, but in this video, we're going to focus on Subtest 2. So let's get going. Now, like we saw before, the NES Elementary Education Subtest 2 is made up of three content domains: mathematics, science, and the arts, health, and fitness. Math makes up approximately 50% of the exam, while science gets another 38%, and arts, health, and fitness counts for around 12%. Each one has competencies nestled under it. These competencies provide information about what will be tested on from each domain. We're going to go over a key concept from each competency. Now, these are going to be essential to what you need to know in your exam. Let's start with the biggest domain, math. The first competency is numeration, number sense, and mathematical operations. This competency covers how students represent and combine numbers. One of the most important things to know for the first competency is place value. That means you'll need to understand a place value chart like this one, and the value each digit within a larger number holds. For example, the digit 7 appears in each of the three numbers, but it holds a different value in each. In 5,237, 7 is in the ones place and has a value of 7. In 7,852, 7 is in the thousands place and has a value of 7,000. And in 82 and 47 thousandths, 7 is in the thousands place and has a value of 0.007. And here's a tip: pay super close attention to the ending of these words. It's really easy to make a mistake between thousands and thousandths. You'll probably be asked to take decimals and turn them into fractions or vice versa. And they may even get a little fancy and throw some percent conversions in there too. Need help with any of that? That's what the 240 study guide is for. Want me to show you a little sneak peek? I thought so. Here's a handy graphic from the study guide that helps you convert between fractions, percents, and decimals. Have a fraction and need a percent? Divide the top number by the bottom, multiply by 100, and add a percent sign. Now that's one competency down, so let's move on to competency 2. Competency 2 is mathematical reasoning and problem solving, communication and representation, and data analysis. There's a lot included in this competency. Each of these topics can be its own chapter in a math textbook. For now, we're going to focus on the data part. You'll likely be given data in a table or chart and asked to interpret it, or you might be asked to do something with the data. For example, you might be asked to work with the measures of central tendency. Now, they tend to make up a central part of this part of the test. Am I right? Just me? Now, if you're given a data set, you'll need to know how to calculate the mean, median, mode, and range. Let's take a look at how these are explained in our study guide.
5 students have their heights measured. The data set is 158, 155, 164, 155, and 168 centimeters. We want to find the mean, median, mode, and range of this data set. First, let's rearrange the data to go from least to greatest. We'll get 155, 155, 158, 164, and 168. To calculate the mean, first add these numbers together to get a total of 800. Then divide the result by the number of students measured, which is 5. This gives us a calculated mean of 160. The median is the middle number in our organized data set, which is 158. The mode is the most frequent number, which here is 155. And our range is equal to 168, the highest number, minus 155, the smallest, which equals 13.
Starting to feel like these skills are in your range? No? Okay, fine. I get it. You're here for my brilliant testing knowledge, not my terrible jokes. In that case, let's move on to competency 3. The third competency in domain 1 is patterns, algebra, and functions. This covers recognizing patterns in number sequences and using your understanding of patterns to make predictions. You'll also need to recognize functions and use algebra to solve real-world problems. Since there are 2 mentions of patterns in the description for this competency, let's focus there. Another, more math-specific name for a pattern is a sequence. A sequence is a list of numbers, shapes, or symbols that go in a specific order. So in general, we're looking at 3 types of sequences here. First up, you've got arithmetic sequences, and these are usually the easiest to figure out. They have a common difference between terms, meaning you add or subtract the same number every time you go from one term to the next. In this example, we add 5 to get from one term to the next. Then you've got geometric sequences. These are a little trickier, but you can handle it. In these, you need to either multiply or divide by the same number to go from one term to the next. In this example, we multiply by 3 each time. And then you've got the trickiest one, and I think they were trying to be funny because they even named them complex patterns. In a complex pattern, you're going to have to identify 2 separate patterns. So, looking at the number sequence 6, 2, 7, 3, 8, and so on, to go from 6 to 2, you have to subtract by 4. Then when we go up to 7, you need to add 5, and you go back and forth between these 2 actions. Subtract 4, add 5, subtract 4, and so on. Now that's just one piece of this competency. To see everything you need to know to be successful on the test, subscribe to the study guide. Are you guys ready to move on to competency 4? Let's do it. The 4th competency is geometry and measurement. It covers a basic understanding of shapes and how they relate to each other. So you'll see things like similar and congruent shapes and how to calculate area and perimeter. It also covers using appropriate measuring tools and converting between measurement systems. There's a lot to unpack in this one, but one thing you're likely to see on the exam is similar shapes. Shapes are similar when they have congruent angle measures and number of sides, but different overall size. When shapes are similar, you can relate them to each other in order to find missing side lengths. Now I know you probably want to see an example of this, right? So let's head over to the study guide.
The 2 triangles here are similar. Let's find the length of the missing side, x. First, we'll draw the outline of a proportion, 2 equal fractions, inside of a rectangle. Label the left side of the rectangle with 2 different shapes. On the top of the rectangle, label the first fraction side A and the second fraction side B. In the first fraction, place the value of side A of each of the shapes, making sure the labels to the left correspond appropriately. In the second fraction, write the known amount of side B. Then place an X for the unknown amount. Then once again, cross-multiply and divide to solve for X.
Like what you saw? There's a ton more videos where that came from. We finished math, now let's head over to science. The first competency in science is life science. So you're going to need to know the characteristics and life processes of different organisms and how to classify them. You're also going to need to know how they reproduce, what their life cycles look like, and how they interact with the environment. That's not a lot, right? Now I know that's a lot, but that's okay, because we're going to pinpoint one of these and zoom in on it. Let's dive into characteristics of organisms, specifically adaptations, which are the traits that improve functions and better equip organisms for survival. There are 2 types of adaptations an organism can have: structural and behavioral. Structural adaptations are physical features that help an organism survive. Think a bird species that develops a different beak shape that makes it easier to get food, or a coat color that helps an animal blend in with their environment. Behavior adaptations are things that organisms do naturally, usually to avoid harm, like when a skunk sprays scent for protection or a bird migrates to avoid cold temperatures. And if you need a little more help with this, stick around to the end of the video. We just might have some questions about adaptations. Now let's keep cruising through domain 2. The next competency is a double whammy. They lumped physical science and earth and space science together. So this covers matter, energy, waves, the solar system, tectonic plates, earth systems, and resources available on Earth. Whoa. Now, while we can't cover every concept on physical science and earth and space now, we'll pick one essential topic that you'll need to know for your exam and zoom in on it. Now remember, if you want more, you can subscribe to our 240 study guide. We cover all the needs to know so that you can feel confident that you'll pass your exam. Okay, let's get into the movement of the solar system, specifically eclipses. I have just a thing to show you. Let's take a peek inside the study guide.
Solar eclipses have the moon in the middle and affect the way the sun looks. Think solar equals sun. Lunar eclipses have the earth in the middle and affect the way the moon looks. Think lunar equals moon.
That preview was just a glance at what we have to offer, and we're so confident in our study guides that we offer a money-back guarantee. Now let's wrap up science with our last competency. Competency 7 covers the nature of science, which is basically a way of grouping the general scientific practices together. These will apply no matter what branch of science you're studying. You will need to understand and apply the scientific method, collecting and measuring data, and how science relates to the other subjects. You'll also need to recognize unifying themes that run between all branches of science, like systems and the relationships between form and function. Now, I know that sounds like a lot, but the biggest thing to pay attention to is the scientific method. Need to brush up on those steps a little bit? Let's look at a chart from our study guide so we can break those down. Students start by identifying a problem, then they make observations about the problem. Next, they form a hypothesis, design and conduct an experiment, record the data they've collected during the experiment, and finally, they draw conclusions. Often, scientists use their conclusions to modify their hypothesis and design a whole new experiment. Here's another tip. You're likely to see questions on how to best implement each of these steps, not just what they are. So make sure you know how to write a proper hypothesis and set up an experiment. We have plenty more where that came from in the study guide. But for right now, let's dive into the last competency. You're doing great. We're almost to the finish line. We've only got one more domain and one competency left: the arts, health, and fitness. You heard me correctly. All of that is shoved into one competency. So for the art part, you need to know the elements associated with music, drama, dance, and art, and recognize art as communication and self-expression. For PE, you'll need to understand the basic structures and functions of the human body and understand how to maintain a physically, mentally, and emotionally healthy body. Let's focus on health for now. It's important to understand the nutrition needed to maintain a healthy body. The United States FDA's current dietary guidelines use the My Plate image to show the relative portion sizes of each type of food for a balanced meal. But like I said, that's just one piece of a pretty broad competency. But we've got that all mapped out for you in our study guide. Now that was our last competency, and you know what that means. It's question time. Let's start at the beginning with Domain 1 in mathematics. Let's take a look at a question about place value. What is the digit in the hundreds place in the product of 63 times 31? The first step here is to actually do the math. So 63 times 31 equals 1,953. So the answer here is D. The digit that occupies the hundreds place is 9. Time for a question about converting between fractions, decimals, and percents. What percent is represented by the shaded area of the decimal square? First, we need to figure out what fraction of the figure is shaded. There are 100 total squares and 24 of them are shaded, which will give us a fraction of 24 over 100, which is equal to 24%. Great. Let's look at a measure of central tendency problem. The number of inches of snowfall in Selbyville is graphed in the bar chart below. What is the mean number of inches of snowfall per month from November to March? To find the mean, we need to add up all values and then divide by the number of values in the data set. So 5 plus 7 plus 9 plus 8 plus 1 equals 30. There are 5 data points, so 30 divided by 5 gives us 6. So this one is correct. Next up in this sequence of questions is a question on sequences. Which of the sequences below is arithmetic? An arithmetic sequence is one where the same amount is added or subtracted from each term to the next. The only one that meets this criteria is B. This sequence has a constant difference of 4 since each term is 4 more than the preceding term, making it an arithmetic sequence. Alright, we're cruising right along. Next stop on the math train is similar shapes. A 6-foot tall person stands 40 feet from a tree and casts an afternoon shadow of 10 feet. His shadow reaches to the end of the shadow cast by the tree. Since we know the length of both shadows, we can build half of our proportion. The man's shadow is 10 feet long and the tree's shadow is 40 feet long. Wait, hold up. Did you catch my mistake? The problem told us that both shadows end at the same place. So this means that the tree's shadow is 40 feet long plus another 10 feet, which gives it 50 feet. Okay, so we can use our 10-foot shadow and our 50-foot shadow to build one half of the proportion. So right away, A and B can both be eliminated because they don't have 10 and 50 together in a fraction. Next, we know the man is 6 feet tall, but we don't know the height of the tree, so H. Here's where it gets tricky. Since the man's measurements are 6 feet tall and a 10-foot shadow, those two numbers need to match up. So choice C is the best. 6 and 10 are both denominators of their fractions. Domain 1, done. Now let's hop off the math train and switch tracks to science. On to domain 2. Remember when we talked about adaptations? Bears are warm-blooded animals that have fur and thick claws. They also hibernate in the winter. What is the hibernation behavior an example of? This is definitely an adaptation. And since we're dealing with something that the animal does instead of a trait the animal has, B is best. An adaptation helps an organism survive, and a bear naturally hibernating is an example of a behavior adaptation. Now we're in the combo of physical and earth science. I know we talked about eclipses before, but how about I show you one that brings in physical science too? Ooh, conduction, convection, and radiation comes up a lot here. How does heat from the sun travel to the earth? Now right away we can cross off photosynthesis. That's a process done by plants to create sugar that can be used as energy. The sun warms the planet by sending heat in the form of electromagnetic waves. This means radiation is the best answer. Alright, one more from the science competency, the scientific method. A student performed an experiment on 3 different types of paper towels. Each of the towels was soaked in a separate beaker, each containing 20 milliliters of water for exactly 15 seconds. The towels were removed. What steps should be next in the procedure in order to accurately identify the paper towel that absorbed the most water? There is only one answer here that allows us to get a measurable difference in our paper towels, which is super important whenever you're conducting an experiment. Choice A is correct. To accurately compare the paper towel absorption, the amount of water remaining in each of the beakers must be measured and compared after removing the soaking paper towels. Competency 2, check. We just got one more to go. Now your last question is coming to you from the health department. I mean, I'm not going to grade you on how clean your restaurant is or anything, but if I were, I bet you'd pass with flying colors, which coincidentally is the same way we think you'll pass your test as long as you use the 240 study guide. Which of the following is a key component of living a healthy lifestyle? Adequate water, nutrition, and exercise, increasing the amount of stationary activities, reducing the amount of sleep, or encouraging all citizens to engage in the same amount of exercise daily? The best answer is A. Adequate water, nutrition, and exercise are key components of a healthy lifestyle. And that's it. We practiced the questions from every competency on the NES Elementary Education Subtest 2. Congrats on finishing the video. If you found it helpful, give it a like. 240 has helped thousands of teachers pass their certification exams, and we want to help you. So take the next step and subscribe to the 240 study guides. They have hours of video so you can watch or listen as you please. It is test aligned so you know precisely what you need to study. And we have hundreds of practice questions so you can be sure that you're ready for the test. And best of all, there's a money-back guarantee. So click the link below right now and get started.